Bruce Feldman is back here. What was it like in Ann Arbor? Paint the word picture for me. Pre-game, during game, after game. What do you got for me? What do you got?
Intense. It was at times when Zach Zinter goes down and it gets silent, and then there's a cheer starts to build up, and he responds to the crowd. I thought there was if there couldn't have been more drama ratcheted into that moment. And then look, as nasty as rivalry is, credit to Ryan Day, he did run up the tunnel to go to pay his respect to him, to Zinter. And then the very next play, Blake Corum breaks like a 20-yard touchdown run.
And flashes 6'5", his number at the Fox camera.
And this is Zach Zinter and Blake Corum, both guys who decided, hey, we're coming back for one more. I mean, he's a running back, and he's coming off injury, and he decided, hey, I'm not done yet. It was, and then the post game was kind of what you'd expect. As crazy as it's going to sound, it did not, as memorable as it was, the year before in Columbus to me kind of blew my mind because I didn't see it coming and the way it fell apart. And it was almost like, we're the only people in this building who think this is going to happen, and it did. In this case, it kind of went the way a lot of us thought it was going to go, right? Michigan this year had a big edge at quarterback, and that bared out. Michigan rode its run game and just kept on leaning on them. Eventually, it was good enough. Their defense made enough plays. And it kind of, I don't think there was anything shocking about it like this. The theater of it, no Jim Harbaugh. It was just it felt like big-time college football all the way through. The atmosphere was intense throughout. There was like never a lull in it. Even when it got quiet, like I said, in the Zach Zinter gruesome injury, it ratcheted the intensity even more into the building.
And it was great that you mentioned how Ryan Day does go and comforts Zinter, and then Sharon Moore and the Michigan staff went out to, I believe it was Tui Moloau, who was involved in the sequence where Zinter's tib-fib occurred, and they went and consoled him, or at least went up and and tapped him on the helmet and all that. And then obviously everybody goes back to their corners and comes out fighting again. What happens now? I feel like we're through the Connor Stallions. What did it all mean during the games phase? At least I'd like to think that's now put to bed. Now we're in the are we in the penalty phase? Because
for
Jim already got
Harbaugh stuff.
Because Jim got 3 games, and it's not just any 3 games. What is happening with this? Are we going to hear anything before the Big Ten, or
I don't.
So we're still in the investigatory phase.
Yeah, and
now.
I think at this point that's a postseason deal now.
Okay,
that is when I say postseason, I'm post. That's a 2024 deal to me, because at this point, if anything comes to light, no matter what it is, at this point, again, Michigan served a significant punishment. Their head coach was away from them. He wasn't away from them for the whole week.
Yes,
but he was away from them on Saturdays, and that does matter. Now, is it as big a deal if he was away permanently? No, but I think at this point, the NCAA is going to go through its process, and we'll circle back on that when it happens.
Well, the crucial part about that, just to jump in here, is that, obviously it depends on how many more games Michigan wins this year, how Harbaugh's standing might be with the regents at Michigan, or what happens. But, the NFL coaching hiring season is going to start the first Sunday before the national championship game.
And he is the one guy in the college coaching space who has a big-time NFL coaching pedigree.
Yes.
If Nick Saban at this stage of his career somehow desperately wanted to be a head NFL head coach, but like Jim Harbaugh took his team that wasn't very good before he got there to a Super Bowl. 44-19 is a really impressive resume. There will be jobs. My gut, and this is something that some people inside Michigan kind of also buy, there's going to be a rebuild in Ann Arbor. Yeah, there's a transfer portal. Yeah, there's still some really good young players who can't leave early. But the bulk of those starters are going on to the NFL. The NCAA is not going to be done with Michigan now. They are not. There will be more punishment. And if Jim Harbaugh is still there, It's not like, oh yeah, he served 3 games for the Big Ten, but we're still not happy with how the sanctions are going to be laid out for the COVID recruiting issues. So I think I'd still be surprised if Jim Harbaugh is the head coach at Michigan a year from now.
Bruce Feldman here on the Rich Eisen Show. Interpret the college football playoff standings for me. How do you interpret what the committee put out there on Tuesday night?
I think the committee reinforced something that I think a lot of us thought might happen, which was they dropped Ohio State a little further down than maybe people thought it was going to be.
I thought it's too high. No, I'm not saying that for rivalry purposes. I mean, Texas and Alabama's playing for their titles.
But and if they win, they will leapfrog Ohio State.
You do believe that?
Oh yeah, because they'd be conference champs. If Alabama beats Georgia, they're leapfrogging a bunch of people, not just Ohio State.
Okay, because to me this indicates, hey, all Florida State's got to do, all Ohio State needs is Florida State slips up and they're moving forward. Otherwise, why not put Ohio State down below Alabama, right?
I think what Ohio State needs to have happen is they certainly need Florida State to lose. I think they need Georgia. I think they need Georgia to win. You know, they need obviously Michigan to win. Ohio State, then maybe they could be into the number 4 slot. But they really need I think they not only need Florida State to lose. I think they need Texas to get knocked off by Oklahoma State too. I think it's going to be a harder sell. I mean, Oklahoma State's not a very good team, especially by conference championship game standards.
Right.
But if you're Ohio State, I think the thing that also hurts them a little bit, they have Penn State's number 10, Notre Dame is a solid win on the road, but that's about it. And they had a close loss at Michigan. I think the thing that hurts them a little, significantly is when you look at that team, they do not look as dangerous as the team last year. The team last year had C.J. Stroud, and that gave them a puncher's chance against anybody. They almost took down Georgia, and they came within the last second field goal of doing that. Kyle McCord, of what I think the committee has looked and seen, is a good young quarterback. There's a big difference now in that offense. And I think I don't think they have as much of a fear factor as an opponent as the team last year did. I just don't think, just from seeing them a lot last year and seeing this team now a lot in person, they're not as good. They may be a little better on defense, but offensively they are not the same team.
So let's put it up one more time because I've got a few questions. Let's just go through one at a time. So what the conference playoff, college football playoff rankings show, winner of Pac-12 in, loser out, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Florida State wins, they're in.
They need to be. They deserve 13-0, and you whipped the third best team in the SEC by like 3 or 4 touchdowns. Yeah, I think they deserve
Okay, so we're not discounting, because you hear that they want the best teams, not the deserveds. They want the best. So how do you say that a team that's undefeated with their backup quarterback over, a Texas team that's Quinn Ewers, quarterbacked, right? I mean, in all honesty.
Honestly, those are the 2 worst Power 5 conferences, the Big 12 right now and the ACC. But still, if the backup quarterback leads them to a win over, right now it's a 2-loss Louisville team, I mean, I still think you can't just diminish everything they've done because you just think
I'm with you.
The backup quarterback's not that good.
Okay. And so Texas wins. How does Texas get in if Alabama beats Georgia? How does that happen?
They need a lot of help. I think
even though Texas has beaten Alabama, I mean, like, let's cape for the Longhorn fan right now because they're like, it shouldn't matter. Like, we beat. I mean, they finally friggin' beat Alabama, and Alabama's still going to go with the same.
And the irony here is they would be really being snubbed by the aura of the league they're about to become. The idea that an SEC champ is going to get left out doesn't compute for anybody. It just doesn't, and it's unfortunate. But I think that the rationale that they would talk themselves into is Alabama with a much improved Jalen Milroe, not the same guy that Texas played early in the year. Now, it's not to say Texas hasn't improved from that point on either, but I think Alabama has improved as much as anybody from the beginning of the season to now, especially Jalen Milroe. If they beat Georgia, I think we're going to look at them way differently. It hasn't happened yet, so we haven't digested it yet.
Right.
But what happens in college football, and I feel like it's way different than it is in other sports because there's just way less games. But when you see stuff happen, it's like we look at them differently. Like we looked at LSU differently when they went to Tuscaloosa with Joe Burrow and they beat Alabama. At that point, it was like, ooh, we just remember all the stuff that had happened before. And then you kind of look, oh, Clyde is actually really good. And this guy's really good. And it's like they're on a different level. And we look at them differently when it happens. If Jalen Milroe beats Georgia, we will look at Jalen Milroe and Alabama much differently. I almost promise you. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen. But I think if it does, I think that'll be, a collective narrative.
Makes complete sense. And the flip side of that is true too, because speaking on behalf of a lot of Wolverine fans watching this season play out, feeling how our team 144 as we refer to them looks, and how deep the team is, and how, as you even pointed out, how many NFL players are on this roster right now. We're feeling really good about the long term hopes for this season, because Georgia looks less than. Right? They don't look like the Georgia the last 2 years. Georgia goes and beats Alabama, it'll be like, oh, okay. They go for a three-peat right now. They'll look a hell of a lot more different in the eyes of a lot of people what if they pound Alabama and just win that game just going in style? It'll be like, there's your three-peat right there.
Well, it'll erase some of the skepticism that people who watched Auburn and a way less athletic quarterback than Jalen Milroe run all over them for a while.
Yes.
Now, if they shut down Jalen Milroe, I think that would be a big statement for them. I think it's also a chance. Carson Beck has quietly, about as quiet as you can be on the number one team, been very, very impressive. But I think, fair or unfair, the benchmark for him now at Georgia is going to be, Stetson Bennett really lit it up in the playoffs. That's when he was seemed like he was just a playmaker and did, I get it. He's not 6'4", and he doesn't do a lot of the same stuff that, you want people evaluate and look for. But he was a really good playmaker in the playoffs, and he seemed like he was pretty unflappable, and he rose to the moment. That's the challenge, I think, now for Carson Beck, if he can show he can do that. Because right now, Missouri's pretty good, but they haven't played anybody who'd say, okay, this is a legit playoff team. And they will play a legit playoff caliber team this weekend.
What do you think is going to happen if Michigan wins the Big Ten championship as expected, and Tony Petitti, the commissioner who suspended Jim, is up there with a trophy in his hand? What do you think?
I think it will surpass, in Jim Harbaugh awkward moments of engagement, the what's your deal with Pete Carroll and whatever happened with Jim Schwartz.
we got like a power ranking.
Nice, I like it. Because those two were really weird.
And whatever happened with Jim Schwartz? Remember that handshake?
Yeah, that was strange.
Okay, that's not bad. I don't know. I think he's going to go up and he'll just take. You
suspended him when they were flying to
Penn State in the air. Day before. That is jacked up. Again, I understand that he accepted the punishment at the end, but on Veterans Day, right?
Yeah, that was
right. But where there were no courts were open for any judicial relief.
Yeah. I think observation of Veterans Day.
One of the biggest,
right? Yeah. So it's a federal holiday.
One of the biggest beefs
they know what they're doing.
The Michigan people had on regard to that is you're basically taking your direction all from the people who are the coaches. It's when does that ever happen in any form of justice in the NCAA?
Well, at least I'm sure one of them wasn't the one that Michigan beat on the weekend. Do you know who the coaches were? Were they all of them?
No, there was a couple guys who were not physically there on that call. I don't know if Brett Bielema was on the call. I think there was somebody else. Now it feels like it's 6 months ago because all this stuff is just piled on top of each other.
Yeah. I think Jim will take the trophy. I mean, again, if they win this game.
They win.
He'll just take the trophy. And maybe point to his name in the Ring of Honor in there, too. His name's on the wall.
I'd be curious if if there are conversations with Jim Harbaugh, whoever talks to him, but hey, if and when you guys do win, what do you say to the commissioner?
I don't think, back here on the Rich Eisen Show radio, Bruce Feldman, we're asking what happens at the podium if Harbaugh wins and Commissioner Tony Petitti's got a trophy to hand him. I think he just takes it and he turns around and he looks at his kids. I think that's the way it would go. But, of course, Iowa's got a other things to say.
And they're a really good defensive team.
They are that. So we just had a whole conversation about the college football playoff Final Four and who is on the outside looking in and whether it's fair to Texas or Alabama or Ohio State or Florida State and all of that business. Flash forward to next year, this ain't the conversation. Completely different conversation. So I believe Ross Dellinger of Yahoo put together what the college football playoff committee's current standings would look like in next year's format. Mm-hmm. And we have it on our screen right now. There it is, where Texas would host Penn State. The winner then plays Michigan.
Like an SEC quadrant.
Correct. And then there's Ohio State hosts Ole Miss. Winner plays Washington. Alabama plays Missouri. Winner plays Georgia. In the Peach Bowl. My goodness gracious. Oregon hosts Tulane. And the winner goes and plays Florida State in the Orange Bowl.
It's fun.
And my question is which one do you like better? The one like this where we're having controversy and talking about who's in, who's out, who deserves or not, or doesn't matter, let's just play it out. And the controversy is who's Tulane keeping out at 12. What do you got for me on that? What do you think?
As a football fan, on the surface, I like what you just showed, Ross's breakdown of what it would be like for 12. The part that I don't love about this is, so we just had a super intense Saturday of Michigan and Ohio State.
And by the way, the rest of the day, Apple Cup, Iron Bowl, Farmageddon, which I know wasn't for a spot, but in the Snowmageddon and Farmageddon.
Wild 4 minutes of that, whatever happened at the end of that game with, you intercepted. No, you intercepted. But I thought Michigan, Ohio State, if it's a rematch the next week.
In the Big Ten championship
game, because now there are no divisions next year. Does that diffuse a lot of, does it make some of the other games less meaningful?
Hell right? Yeah, it does. And certainly, what if they face each other for a third time in the college football playoff?
Yeah, then it feels like college basketball, right?
Or, professional football where, Titans-Ravens used to play 3 times in a year, right? But they played 1 time in the playoffs as well. I don't know. I'm back and forth on it. I look at that and I'm like, hell yeah, do I want to see Ole Miss and like Lane Kiffin in the horseshoe? Texas and Penn State is a fascinating one.
I think the matchups are really compelling. I just think there's going to be the awkwardness of the double play, right? Because I remember this coming up with Bedlam at one point before Oklahoma, Oklahoma and Texas were going to bail from the Big 12. About what happens when the teams that are normally at the end of the year, now all of a sudden you strip away divisions so they can have a rematch. I think, it's fine with Texas and OU in this case. It would have been if OU was in the Big 12 title game, because that game happens early. Red River is like basically in the middle of the season.
Yes,
it's when it's like, hey, we're going to play we just got to beat these guys. Now you got to beat them again another week from now. That's the part that I think is like. And it's not going to always happen in this setup, but there are a few of these scenarios which I think are going to be a little tough to wrap your head around.
How about this wild idea? How about we get rid of conference title games?
It's a lot of money people are.
I get it. I hear you. I understand it.
I work for one of those companies.
Hey, I understand that. And Chris and I we were joking about it earlier with TJ also. Like, remember the time when you used to say, "Oh, these college kids, we can't do this. They're college kids. They can't play 16 games in a year. That's professional football." Well, 12 regular season games, 1 conference championship game. The loser then winds up not getting the bye, has to play 3 games to win it all. That's 16.
Well, that's a lot of wear and tear on college athletes, right? And there's no doubt about it.
Academically, too, right? Because they're going to have to find time to actually study, right?
Well, a lot of classes are online or whatever. Yeah, there's that, too. But I think it's just... physically, the injury risk and everything else.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure at some point you'll see somebody who will be like, all right, I'm good. That's it or whatever. I'm not 100% right now. I'm not going to risk it, even if it's especially if it's a team that's like a 9 seed or whatever. I mean, I think at some point somebody will say that.
For professional football aspirations is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that will happen. I mean, I don't think it'll be across the board.
If Christian McCaffrey got crap for sitting out a Sun Bowl in El Paso, Do you imagine what red flags would be raised at the professional level of somebody that sits out as a 9 seed in the college football playoff?
Is he really good? Because the red flags end up going away if you're really, really, really good.
Exactly. I know. I'm just saying, narratives, conversations.
I think for me, I'm wondering how many years are we going to get where the best team doesn't win the national championship? Because with the BCS and even this Final Four, you get the sense that the best team always won.
Can I bring this up?
By the way, that's a Patriot fan that got beaten by Eli Manning
that's where I was
right there.
Go though.
Who's the best team? The team that wins it all.
It's a tournament, right? In the NFL, right?
But nobody thinks the Giants were the best team.
There you go.
So
there you go.
I don't know. Even look at college basketball. It's a random. It's a crapshoot. Connecticut was not the best team in the country last year. I'm sorry. They
just dominated everybody. Like, I have no dog in that fight at all. But, like, they just smashed everybody. I remember, like, Hurley afterwards was like, it seemed to be really matter of fact, like, oh, yeah, we knew we were going to kick the crap out of everybody kind of thing. Like, that's how it felt.
Yeah.
This feels a little more like, sometimes in baseball, it feels like it's the hottest team that goes through.
Right.
That's true.
College football, I feel like, is the most tilted towards that not happening. I could see it where it's not the best team ends up winning it. I'd be really shocked if a number 12 or 11 seed ends up winning it all.
In the 3 minutes I have left with you here, Caleb Williams, in an interview with the Los Angeles Times, said it's quote-unquote a game-time decision whether he decides to go pro at the January 15th deadline. What's your reaction to that?
I'll be shocked if he ends up staying at USC right now or staying in college football. Period. I mean, it's like, okay.
So what does that mean? Game time decision? Like, he's just truly on the fence?
The number one pick.
Is that what it is? He'll stay in there if the team isn't to his satisfaction?
He makes $8 million next year in NIL. Like, why wouldn't he just play college football?
Yeah, Matt Rule said today a quarterback in the transfer portal means $1 to $1.5 million in NIL. You have to basically
a really good one. There's some
what he
that
said.
Did
you basically have to promise that in the portal to get a good quarterback in the portal? So what's he worth? I don't think it's money. I don't think, right? I mean, again, you're the inside man here. What do you think?
Again, I don't know how he and his dad's helping manage him through this.
Yes.
I mean, USC's right now in certainly a state of flux.
Losing 5 of 6. How the hell did that happen to end?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're Caleb Williams, you saw him like how emotional he was.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago after one of the losses. I mean, at this point, like, you start your clock in terms of as a draft pick. If you delay it another year, I think ultimately is like, okay, are you that leery of who is going to take you? Because there's no guarantees next year. It's all of a sudden, oh, yeah, I'm going to stay another year.
It's more viable, a franchise.
The other thing with Caleb, too, and I know he's a sturdy, he's not like he's Bryce Young size, but you run around, you take a lot of hits. You're going to have another year of that risk where, it's a career-altering injury. You're going to risk that to stay in college another year. That would really surprise me because that's a position where a lot of guys do not make it through a regular season that way.
I mean, we just saw the way it ended, too. Bruce Feldman, thank you for coming here, brother. Awesome.
Pleasure.
We'll see you next week when things will be a little bit more crystallized. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.